Detectives say 4 men wearing hoodies broke into the front window. They hit the 2 men inside the home and tied them up along with a 19-year-old woman using zip ties. Then the crooks proceeded to take watches.
So a quiet home on a quiet street like this was recently invaded by a gang of thieves who broke in, held residents hostage, and stole $20,000. But although everyone in New York wishes this were a one-off incident, raiding homes is actually part of a new and disturbing pattern of crime.
Video shows hooded suspects trying to break into a home, first smashing the surveillance camera. Police say Wednesday morning at 5:30, at least 6 armed masked men forced their way into the basement where residents, including a child, were sleeping.
It's definitely a shock. It's not something I would expect from this area, definitely.
Well, a warning tonight about some high-tech burglars. They're using electronic devices to disable the Wi-Fi used by cameras and security systems in many homes.
He tried to call 911, but his cell phone had no signal. The device, known as a Wi-Fi jammer, sends a powerful pulse that temporarily disables wireless devices.
At first, they come downstairs, but they look for money and for the key for the car.
These tenants who didn't want to share their names say the burglars demanded the keys to a Range Rover that was parked out front, but told them it wasn't theirs.
Police adding very little detail at this hour, not even saying if this was truly random or if there was some sort of connection between the victims and the suspects.
Homes and apartments are becoming the new battleground in New York City's war on prosperity. But what nobody's talking about is that thieves are now targeting homes and apartments because their other sources of income are either shutting down or locking down, leaving our residences as their only option. Because these robbers, they didn't just wake up one morning and decide that today would be the day they'd start stealing things for the very first time. No, in fact, many of these armed home invaders are career criminals who've had plenty of practice committing other crimes like shoplifting and getting arrested, and frighteningly getting released by our legal system. Because in New York, we don't put people in jail for theft, robbery, or assault, which is what these thugs started out doing before invading and robbing homes. And they got away with it because our lawmakers can't stand the thought of a criminal spending their birthday behind bars. And that's a shame because while store after store has been shutting down due to rampant crime, our legal system has been handing out get-out-of-jail-free cards to every criminal arrested, turning New York into a training ground for petty criminals. But now businesses have had enough and are chaining up their merchandise with bike locks or walling off entire sections of their store with plexiglass to passively defeat thieves. Which brings us to the real reason why homes are the latest item on the menu for our criminal underworld, because as more and more stores shut down, those that remain are becoming impenetrable fortresses, which forces opportunistic thieves to give up stealing there, but they don't give up stealing completely because crime is their full-time job. And let's face it, most homes don't have round-the-clock security guards. And most of us don't think that what we have is that valuable, therefore it's not locked up in a safe, it's just kind of lying around, but that's what the thieves are looking for. But as you're about to see, the biggest reason homes are the new target is that by the time our understaffed police force arrives to save you and your family, the criminals who broke in will have already fled the scene, taking with them everything you care about. So here we are on a nice, quiet street in Brooklyn, New York City, full of what look like happy homes and apartments. And as you look around, you won't see any signs of economic distress or crime, which, as it turns out, is exactly what these criminals are looking for.
Definitely a shock. It's not something I would expect from this area, definitely.
Neighbors were stunned as NYPD investigators moved in and out of the house collecting evidence. Detectives say 4 men wearing hoodies broke into the front window. They hit the 2 men.
So these criminals, they were pretty brazen. They just walked right up the stairs of the place they were going to break into and went right in. Through the front window, an obvious entry point which was not secured, but which was visible by at least one security camera. Yet they apparently didn't care if they got spotted. They were wearing dark clothing and coverings to conceal their identities, and they planned their break-in for 4 o'clock in the morning when most people are asleep. Which unfortunately also included the 3 occupants who were inside the home at the time it was broken into, and who were about to be held hostage by thieves who police think knew exactly what they were looking for.
Then the crooks proceeded to take watches, designer bags, and cash before fleeing in a dark-colored vehicle. Residents of the home did not come to the door when we dropped by after police left.
This neighborhood is pretty safe. It's safer than the one I previously lived in before, definitely.
So what got stolen? Well, it looks like a bunch of things that were probably lying around within arm's reach. Designer handbags that could be resold, piles of money, $20,000, that's no joke. Apparently jewelry was also stolen from the home in question. It seems like the thieves were just looking for whatever whatever they could make money on later. And apparently when thieves fled the scene, they did so in a dark-colored vehicle, which was most likely stolen. But the frightening thing about all this is that thieves don't just break into random homes and apartments. Usually they know exactly what they're looking for before they even decide to go inside. And the frightening thing about that is it means that they must have learned something about the home or who owns the home beforehand, either by spying on the neighborhood ahead of time or watching the person enter and leave the home on more than one occasion. Here's the home in question, nothing flashy about it. The perpetrators probably had information that led them to decide that this was their target. Now, police haven't been very clear on the details of exactly why this particular home was targeted, but even if the criminals in question did know something about the occupants who were inside ahead of time, they don't always need that kind of information in order to figure out where to go next.
Video shows hooded suspects trying to break into a home on 62nd Avenue, first smashing the surveillance camera. Police say Wednesday morning at 5:30, at least 6 armed masked men forced their way into the basement where residents, including a child, were sleeping.
So here we have a home that was targeted because in the driveway of the property, criminals saw 2 brand new cars. One of them was a luxury SUV. And with this robbery, we have security footage and we can see exactly how determined thieves were to access this home. Now, apparently they first tried to get in through the front door or the front window, which had bars over it and was inaccessible. And after that didn't work, they went down the stairs and then tried to get in through the basement, which is a lot of work. These people were obviously very determined, but the presence of that luxury SUV parked outside in the driveway, that told them that inside the home they would probably find more nice stuff, along with probably the keys to that car. And by having an expensive vehicle parked out in front of the house, the wealth inside the house was also being advertised. And that's the thing that a lot of home invaders are looking for before they decide to go in the case of residents that don't have a vehicle, say a rather wealthy looking individual who's walking the streets. There have been reports of people like that being followed home in the evening or approached at bars and restaurants, and then the invaders just invite themselves over. But in this case, a nice looking home with nice stuff parked outside, that was the signal these criminals needed to go in. And when you think about it, advertised wealth is the signal criminals everywhere are looking for. This happens at Macy's when they go in there and steal expensive things like North Face jackets right off the rack. And this even happens to an extent in drugstores where high-end products and fragrances get stolen because they can be resold on the internet. But because these places are on total lockdown right now with security and plastic and wires and alarms, now you've got people breaking into the front doors of homes, and if that doesn't work, then they try to go in the basement. But as you're about to see, the reason this is happening is because our city allows unrelenting retail crime, and the more retail crime they allow to just happen, the more stores buckle down, and the more that forces criminals into our homes. That's crazy. Every single freezer here with frozen food in it is locked up, along with everything else you'd expect like detergent. And these stores are full of technology that stops thieves in a passive manner by discouraging them. Now, of course, locked up razors and security cameras, that doesn't discourage everybody, but a lot of thieves will look elsewhere when they see a store that looks like this place, where you have entire aisles of the store that are all walled off. And in a world where professional criminals pursue the path of least resistance to get what they want and earn a living, what you see here is the reason many are now looking for other avenues of criminal activity, which is only going to start happening even more often because of some of the new measures places like this are going to roll out in the near future.
It uses the store's security cameras to detect suspicious movements by shoppers, like slipping an item in a jacket, a pocket, or a bag. The staff then gets an alert on their phones when that happens.
This is a previous test that we made, so you can see him putting stuff in his pocket. See?
So now, stores that already have an operable security network can upgrade it to an AI system that follows people around and monitors their body movements and spots when they put things in backpacks or pockets. That is going to be game-changing for in-store security, especially when combined with other pre-existing types of security. And what it means is that if a criminal is caught in a store prowling around stealing stuff, employees will immediately get an alert. And store security will be able to take action right away before the thief even tries to leave the store. And this is going to give store security the ability to monitor every single customer in the store at once, which would normally be impossible, especially in a massive store like Macy's, which has thousands of customers roaming around on multiple floors at the exact same time. There's no way a team of security professionals could monitor all of that activity at once. But these new cameras are going to spot the troublemakers and let everyone know exactly who they are and where they are right away, which is going to be great for big chains that can afford afford all of this security, but the bad news is it's going to increasingly force our crooks to look for easier, less secured options like your home.
Our producer put a pricey face cream in her bag, and within seconds, one of the workers gets an alert. The next step is a little trickier, approaching the thief. Workers told us they like to be non-confrontational and simply ask the shopper to pay for the item, but sometimes the shopper just bolts.
So it's not a perfect system, but that's fascinating how it reads the person's body movements and behavior and gives a prediction as to whether or not they've taken something. Which is going to help businesses that get robbed a lot stay open instead of shutting down, but will also quickly change the habits of our criminals in a way that nobody is really ready for. Because think about this, if you're a criminal and you go into stores that you've stolen from in the past or that you think are going to be easy to rob, and immediately the store security's on you and they just catch you and they're following you around from seemingly the moment you walk in and start looking at things, you're going to realize, wow, this is not a good idea to steal from this place. They're going to catch me, and then you're going to go somewhere else. And if that happens at another store as well, like let's say it happens at 2 or 3 CVS or 2 or 3 of these snipes, you're going to just walk away from CVS. You're going to say, you know what, I'm done with that place. Every time I go in, they either know who I am or something. They've got my number. But the problem is, once that starts happening to a critical mass of criminals, they're all going to realize it's not worth it to go to a store anymore. And then they're going to start stealing people's personal belongings from their homes, which wouldn't be happening at all if this city didn't leave it up to stores to passively police themselves. If we would actually police our streets and lock up our criminals, none of this would be an issue.
Shoplifting impacts both the store owner and the honest customer.
It's not only about the immediate loss of goods, it has also a lot of indirect consequences, like out of stocks, the fact that it drives prices up for all other consumers because you have to make up for shoplifting.
Quinnick says he was...
So the problem with allowing all of this theft in our city is that it's made our city basically a playground or training ground for thieves. They can steal things, and as long as it's under $1,000, they don't ever get sent to jail, and they get a whole bunch of practices and second chances if they get caught, because this is just a misdemeanor charge. It's a terrible system. And what you've got now is a situation where the people who get caught stealing end up trying again, employing the lessons learned from their last arrest, which didn't result in any jail time, effectively making them better, hardened criminals with no reason to stop. But once these stores figure out how to stop them permanently, they're going to have no choice but to go elsewhere. Which means soon, trained criminals are going to start doing everything in their power to get inside places where people are living, because eventually stealing from stores is going to be as hard and unprofitable as it is to steal from a bank. Apparently, bank robberies pay on average about $4,000, but the risks of robbing a bank are insane. That's a federal crime. You could do real time. On top of that, banks are like the most secure places on the planet. You got bulletproof glass, you got cameras everywhere, silent alarms, marked bills, and that's why as bank robberies have gone out of style, shoplifting has become the new trend. It's a lot easier to steal a whole bunch of stuff from a store and resell it on the internet and make tens of thousands of dollars, which is why it's happening so much. But once that goes out of style, something new will have to take its place, and we are already seeing what that is. It's a critical mass of criminals sinking to the lowest common denominator every single chance they get, and there's a related type of crime that's also exploding at the exact same time.
NYPD statistics show an increase in robberies involving mopeds or scooters citywide. Year to date, as of mid-August, there were 263 in 2022, 340 last year, and 452 so far this year.
So most people don't realize this, but moped crime, that's actually a precursor to apartment-related crime, because people walking down the street have valuables on them as well, and some criminals don't want to take the chance of trying to get into that person's home later when they could just ride by on their moped and commit crime right now. And if crooks are unable to rip off businesses, they're gonna rip off the people who shop at those businesses. And if they see someone walking down the street with a nice bag that they can't steal from Macy's, well, they can just take it from that person, which is wrong. This shouldn't be happening, but it is. And we're seeing it happen a lot with wristwatches. Those are getting stolen off people's arms when they're out having dinner at a nice restaurant. You've got people out at a table by the side of the street. Criminals ride up on their bike. They've got their helmets on. Nobody knows who they are, and they have a weapon, and they tell people to just take off their valuables and throw them into the sack, leading many to say that these are the predictable results of decriminalizing crime, with critics saying that none of this would be happening if everybody who stole something wound up in jail. If those people weren't left to themselves on the streets walking around as free men, they wouldn't have all this free time to plot more crime. But now every single New Yorker has to watch their backs in public. They could become a victim of a random robbery that's never going to be pursued, with a person who's never going to be caught. And it gets even worse because now those robbers are following following people into their homes. They're figuring out who lives where, how much they're worth, and they're going after them. They're either looking at nice cars and driveways, looking in windows to see people living a lavish lifestyle. It's terrible. But what can we expect from a city that allows criminals to become hardened criminals by letting them get away with all kinds of little crimes that they get very, very good at? Is that why we've got people that have turned to crime as their full-time occupation? And if we were to put those criminals in jail, would we have more stores that stay open instead of shutting down? And would people be safe when they walk down the street or inside their apartments when they're sleeping? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.